Good evening. Welcome to the Deep 404. Tonight, I want to start off with some news which has just come through on some Telegram channels. Reports that anti-tank missiles have been launched from southern Lebanon and have struck an Israeli military base in the north of Israel. There are further reports, and there's video allegedly showing some of the aftermath of the anti-tank missiles striking. And just as I'm recording this now, there are reports of armed clashes on the border with Lebanon. So this is most likely, possibly, members of Hezbollah, the Lebanese organisation, who have in the past been supported by Iran and are aligned with Hamas in some of their ideology and their thoughts and plans around the occupation of the Palestinian areas of Gaza and the West Bank. So I think that Israel is playing a risky game here. There have been multiple announcements from members of the Israeli military and government that they will be embarking upon a full military occupation against Gaza. This will lead to IDF troops, Israeli Defense Force troops, involved in street to street, building to building, room to room, urban combat in Gaza. There has already been sustained bombing, aircraft, missile and bomb attacks on buildings in Gaza. They've been going on relentlessly for the last day. The trap that I feel that Israel may be falling into here is that their response to the Hamas attacks and Hamas slaughter of Israeli civilians over the last couple of days may lead to what is perceived as being a heavy-handed response from Israel. And if there is the global perception of a heavy-handed response, there may be two areas that this will become problematic for Israel. One, maybe with Western support. If the response is deemed to be too heavy and not commensurate with the attacks from Hamas, then we may find that there is a growing perception of Israel as being the bully in this conflict. And this is already a common perception amongst a lot of people in the West. But you may find that will grow and that Western support may waver. There have been large protests in Western nations, in America, in Australia, large groups of people supporting the Palestinians and their cause. So that's one area that a heavy-handed response from Israel could be problematic for Israel. Israel has spoken about, there has been talk or terms thrown around of bringing war, bringing hell to Gaza, leveling Gaza, ending Hamas. And if these sort of activities where there is the desire by Israel to push the civilians out of Gaza, if it is interpreted that there are attacks where not enough concern and care is taken for civilian life, then this may well move Israel into the area of people alleging that they've committed war crimes. And if they are performing acts which are considered this way, again, this in the future is likely to undermine their goals in terms of putting an end to Hamas. The other area that this may be a trap for Israel is that if the response is deemed as being too heavy by Arab nations and Arab groups that are friendly towards Hamas and its cause, then Israel may find that they have more than just Hamas that they have to deal with, and they may find that they have Hezbollah, as it seems may be starting to get involved now, but they may find that Hezbollah commits completely to this conflict and joins Hamas. If things were to proceed further, it's possible that you may see other groups joining Hamas and Hezbollah, and you may even ultimately see overt support from Iran. It's a situation that we could move to here. There are some things that have been reported which, if correct, are not a good look. Let's just go here. Now, this is reportedly footage from Gaza showing what looks to be some form of incendiary. It's been reported as being white phosphorus being used. I can't confirm that this is white phosphorus being used, but it does appear to be some form of incendiary cluster type munition being used, and again reportedly being fired by the Israeli Defense Forces on areas within Gaza. So that type of activity is the sort of thing that may end up undermining Israel's attempts here at quashing Hamas, but may lead to further repercussions for the Israelis in terms of growing support in the Arabic world against them. The Americans are committing support here. The US aircraft carrier, the battle fleet, the Gerald Ford, is being sent to the Middle East. Now, while not confirmed, I saw some discussion mentioning earlier today that possibly the nuclear Nimitz-class carrier Ronald Reagan may also be moved to the Middle East after its deployment in the South Korean port of Busan completes later this week. It's the Ronald Reagan has been moved to South Korea. It's docking in Busan on Thursday, I believe, to give a show of support there as the US becomes concerned, or South Korea becomes concerned about North Korea's intentions. And as we see reports of increased communication and support between North Korea and Russia. Hamas itself has called on the Muslim and Arab world for general mobilization in support of Palestinians on this Friday. There have been a number of groups already who have announced that if American forces do become involved in this conflict, then American bases and assets within the Middle Eastern region will become legitimate targets in the conflict. The Abdul Malik al-Houthi, the Yemeni leader of the Houthi movement, Ansar Allah, he has stated that American interests would be attacked with missiles and drones if Washington intervenes to support Israel. Also, Iraqi politician Hadi al-Amiri, leader of the political and military group the Badr organization, which has ties to Iran, has made similar statements, quoting him that if they intervene, this being the Americans, we would intervene. We will consider all American targets legitimate, he said. So we can see how the rhetoric is ratcheting up. Also, there are reports today that mortar shells were fired from into Israel from Syria earlier today. The Israeli Defense Forces have reported that a number of missiles landed in open areas on Israeli territory from Syria. There are reports from Syria that Hezbollah forces and associated groups from Lebanon and Syria advanced in the last 24 hours and have taken positions in the Syrian town of Barika. Let's just go to the map here. This is Barika, just here. It's about 2 kilometers away from the Israeli border, around the area of the Golan Heights here in the northwest of Israel. The Golan Heights area was an area that was annexed by Israel from Syria after the Six-Day War in 1967. Apart from the US and Israel, who recognize the area as part of Israel, the bulk of the rest of the world considers this to still be an area of Syria which is under military occupation by Israel. But anyhow, there appear to be Hezbollah and related groups who have moved into an area there only a couple of kilometers from the border, and reports of shells being fired from Syria into Israel. Overall, the situation here is very tense and very dangerous. There, as we've seen, if you compare this conflict to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, they are different. This one has, how would you phrase it, far more passion and hatred, I would say, would be the emotions behind a lot of what we will see and are seeing here. The conflict in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. We know that there were far closer ties between Ukraine and Russia. There was even the assumption in the early days of the Russian special military operation that the Russian forces would be able to advance through Ukraine without any great pushback because they were all Slavs. And there are reports even from the field, I've mentioned that before, a video I saw of a couple of young Russian guys who'd been effectively drafted to fight, and when they asked what they would say to the Ukrainians who were only about 60 meters away from them on the other side of the front line, they said, we would say to them, go home, we're all Slavs, we don't need to be fighting with each other. here in the Palestinian regions and in Israel, we have a very, very different dynamic here. We have at least 80 years of conflict in this area. We have a small number of Arab people in the Palestinian areas who are, it seems, going to be suffering terribly in Gaza over the coming days if Israel does carry out its stated objectives of removing all of Hamas from Gaza. And the area is surrounded by Arab nations, many of them who are friendly to the Palestinians, even though there has been better relations between Israel and some of these nations. There is still definitely the tinder there for conflict to flare again. I've purposely not shown a lot of the video that's available from the last couple of days of the conflict here in Israel. None of it is good, whether it's been the video from the first days of the Israeli soldiers and Israeli civilians being captured and those being killed and paraded around, nor is the footage of the Palestinian parents running from the rubble, carrying their children, holding their babies, some of them dead. It's dreadful on both sides. As I said yesterday, what needs to happen here is that instead of looking to inflame the situation, we need a way of finding peace in this area of the world. Okay, that's it for this Israel update for tonight. I'm going to do a Ukraine one, so if you're watching this, there should be a one on Ukraine up very shortly as well, as there's been big news there in Andriivka, in that area just north of Donetsk, which I'll cover off there.